Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Today, I cannot believe it, but we have Chuck Dixon, comic book writer extraordinaire. Big fan, big fan. Thank you so much for showing up.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Oh yeah, I'm over the moon right now. Anybody who's been watching my channel knows I just can't stop talking. But this is the first time I'm kind of like speechless. Thank you again. Let me start at the beginning. I've been a fan of yours since Airboy #1 was the first comic book that I remember purchasing with your name on it.
Wow.
I was working at a comic book store, and Larry, the owner of the Incredible Pulp, said, "You got to get this." And I was like, "Okay." I never heard of Airboy, and I've been hooked ever since. So
cool.
I know you had 2 issues that of like a mini revival. Any more coming out?
Not for the moment. Not for the moment. I'm talking to somebody about doing hardcover omnibuses.
Okay.
Really restoring it. Because the IDW paperbacks are nice, but they didn't do a lot of restoration work on it.
Oh, okay. I found that to be such a bizarre comic. World War II, and then Misery and the Flying Tomb. Such a cool comic. Ah, man.
There's a lot of weird stuff in Airboy, which is what made me love it.
Yeah. Again, I'm like flustered now. Forgive me, but I've been listening to your Chuck Dixon every Wednesday. Ask Chuck. I've been submitting questions. I don't know.
If no, absolutely. You submit some great questions.
Thank you. I'm the crazy guy with the helmet.
Right.
I joke with my wife. She goes, "Oh, don't watch Chuck Dixon this week. It costs you money every time you watch him." Because I bought your novels, Shrinkage, the Conan books, the other one, the Unknown with again, I'm getting flustered now. I'm embarrassing myself. The Forgotten People with Emily Schales, however you say her name.
Oh yeah, the Forgotten Man. Yeah,
Forgotten Man. Yes. Oh yeah.
Schales, yeah.
Yeah, and the Flashman in charge. You got me to read stuff that I never thought. So, and you got me watching cowboy movies again that I haven't watched.
All right, all right. Well, my work is done here.
Yeah. See you. Nice talking to you. So, I guess the big news that everybody wants to, you work with the Eric July and the Ripperverse.
Yeah. He when he first started, making waves, I just contacted him and said, "Look, I support what you're doing. I support anybody who wants to serve the underserved comic book readership.
Yep.
Who aren't enjoying what DC and Marvel's doing anymore." So, and from there it just sort of grew. And then he asked me, "You want to contribute?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely."
Yeah, and you're doing Alpha Core, right? Is the name of your?
Yeah, we just announced Joe Bennett as the artist.
Yeah, I didn't want to say the name in case. Yeah, Joe Bennett. That is great for the Mortal Hulk. What a great talent! That is amazing.
Yeah, that guy's awesome. I mean, he's a guy that stepped away from Marvel when he just couldn't handle what they were doing anymore, and he's drawn the whole thing. I mean, we've been keeping this secret for quite a while.
Yeah. I from listening to you every week, you work ahead. You said you on average you're 6 months ahead of your deadlines.
Well, when I work for DC and Marvel, I could be, but these days I'm a little closer to deadline because it's generally miniseries or web comics, stuff like that. So it's harder to get ahead. But I do have like 3 novels that are half completed that I'm looking forward to getting finished with, and I did already write the next project Joe and I are going to work on for Ripperverse.
Oh, cool!
It's a character he and I created.
Oh, cool. See, okay. So you're making up your own characters for July's. Oh, cool.
Well, I mean, he's got a great deal. I mean, he offers participation in anything we create. He pays a great page rate. He pays on time. He's a man of his word.
No wonder everybody at Marvel can't stand him.
Oh yeah.
Did you see this nonsense with Tony Isabella attacking him? I don't understand.
If your last obstacle in the fight against whatever this is Tony Isabella, the war's over. I mean, he's the last man standing on the woke side. The guy hasn't written anything in over 40 years.
It's a shame because I had fond memories of the guy, and now it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Whenever I see these creators attacking people, I don't care if you're right wing or left wing, but when I see you stepping out and attacking fellow creators over what did Eric July do to anybody that hurts anybody?
Well, he stepped out of line. He wasn't. He's uppity.
Right.
I mean, that's what they object to. He's not putting out what they want. He's in direct competition with them. And Eric is, I mean, a lot of these crowdfunders have been very successful, but I think Eric is the first one that's actually making a dent in market share because he's selling a lot of comics.
It's a legit phenomenon, and I'm excited for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing real volume. He's doing volume with trade paperbacks that they wish they could do on a monthly.
Right. Yeah. And he's doing it with respect for the audience. Even when people are attacking him, I don't see him stepping low and saying anything nasty. Like he responds. Part of me feels like he should just ignore these people, but I guess it's fun.
Well, it's all promo,
Yeah,
I mean,
it
gives him something to post about,
Yeah,
they're helping him sell these books.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, as long as they spell his name right?
Exactly. I mean, they're the ones spreading the word.
True. And he went to Comic-Con, and as far as I know, the pictures that I've seen, he was like one of the biggest deals there.
Oh yeah, he would be. I mean, he is like you said, he's a true phenomenon. Right. He's put a lot of himself into this. He's put a lot of money into it. I mean, before he ever raised a dime, he put a lot of his own savings into running this, and he's doing everything right. I've seen a lot of like new comic book companies come and I see everything they do wrong, and I don't see Eric doing anything wrong.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited for him. And like I said, one guy was, I don't know why, somebody on Twitter, Twitter, I find for the most part, Twitter to be very positive. I talked to a but one guy, I don't know what it was. He just went out of his way to argue with me of all people. Like Eric July doesn't know I exist. And I just said to him point blank, what is Eric July taking away from you? Right. Like you could still make a comic book. You could still work for Marvel. You could still ignore him. You know what I mean? Like I'm excited for the guy. He's hiring people. I'm sure there's truck drivers delivering comic books. You know what I mean? I think about that. I'm a logistic person. I'm
right.
You know what I mean? So I'm thinking about the delivery guys, the truck drivers. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like Carlos Slim, the richest guy in Mexico.
Yeah.
They always ask him, why don't you give to charities? He goes, I create jobs.
Right.
That's better than charity.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Commerce keeps the world moving.
Absolutely. You give somebody charity, and when it's gone, it's gone. You give them a job, a livelihood, a career. That's going to last them a lifetime.
Last week I had a live chat on I do these every Wednesday. Last week I spoke with Renzo Rodriguez, your artist on Impossible Stars.
Oh, cool.
What a wonderful guy he is. And he had sung your praises. He said he loved working with your scripts. He said you sent him full scripts, and he really appreciated it. So that's that. I wanted to talk to you about that. You say that whenever you do your scripts, it's a full script.
Yeah.
So do you break down into panels, pages?
Panels, the dialogue, everything's there.
Oh, okay.
So that they have a full understanding. The artist has a full understanding of the story, and the dramatic high points and all the rest of it. But I'm very flexible. I mean, if the artist has a better idea or wants to stretch something out, I mean, Joe Bennett loves 2-page spreads, so I built as many of them as I could into the story because I want to go for what he wants. I want him to draw a comic he wants to draw, and I'm that way with every artist. And I'm very clear about what I want, but I'm not dictatorial. I'm just like, look, it's important that we emphasize this because it shows up later. I just let them know how the story is structured, and then they're off to the races, man. I mean, they're the ones that have to tell the story. I'm just giving them a story to tell. So I'm not one of these guys who, when I see the art, I compare it to the script. I mean, if I see the art and it looks terrific, okay, mission accomplished. It looks terrific. I've been told by a lot of artists that they like working from my scripts, and letterers particularly like my scripts because my characters don't talk a lot.
Well, I think that's a rookie mistake. I've been doing videos on comics for a while, and that's one thing that I noticed, that some comics, they just verbose and they're just I was talking to a Don Chin comic, and I said, "Look at this whole page. There's no dialogue. We're just drinking it." I think it's like here I am talking to you about rookie mistakes. Who am I?
Well, you're a comic book consumer. I mean,
yes.
You understand the language of comics because you read comics. So, I mean, anybody who understands the language of comics has a right to say something about it because this works or this doesn't work. I mean, to me, I don't have my characters talk a lot because I want the artist to drive the story. The biggest rookie mistake I see comic writers make, and comic artists as well, is first the comic writers, the mistake they make is they're never, the beginning comic writers are never specific enough about what they want. Like it's an imposition to ask the artist for a particular thing that they need for the story, but the artist appreciates it if you're specific. That way he doesn't have to do a lot of guessing. And he's partnered with you. And then the rookie mistake that artists make is they don't pull the camera back often enough. They don't give us
close-ups.
Yeah, it's all close-ups and medium shots like an old TV show. And it's like, no, pull that camera back. Let us see where they are. Give them some negative space. I mean, I had a guy show me pages recently, and he had this like barbarian character falling into an abyss. But he cut it off so you couldn't see the guy's whole body. And you really couldn't see that much of the abyss. And I said, so just the guy's smaller and the abyss larger. It's that simple.
Yeah, small abysses aren't really that dramatic.
No.
You need a large abyss.
Yeah. I mean, falling into a whirlpool and falling into a toilet, it's two different things.
Did at the beginning, I know you do full script. Did you ever work like a Marvel method?
I did when I first started on Savage Sword of Conan. Gary Quapis was my artist, and he was used to working Marvel style.
Okay.
And so they would send me the Xerox pages, and I used to literally have nightmares in which they accidentally sent me the originals, and I was drawing on them with Sharpie to place the balloons.
Oh God!
And to wake up like, oh no. And I didn't like working that way because I was leaving too much of the story up to him. And I wasn't getting the sense of the story across. Not that Gary was a bad storyteller. I mean, he's a good writer on his own. But we weren't working together, And so I would get pages back, and here's Conan, and he's screaming here, and he's talking to this guy here, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying.
Oh, okay.
So I've got to make up dialogue, totally out of context with the story I was telling. So finally, I said to Gary, "Look, let me try full script one time and see if you like it." And Gary's like, I don't know. I said, so one time, if you don't like it, I'll go back to the way we were doing it before. Got the full script. When he was done, 50-page story. He was done with a 50-page story. He went, yeah, this is better. he was much happier with it. So I never went back. The only 2 times I worked Marvel style after that was when I did Warzone with John Romita Jr. and I did a Punisher arc with Joe Kubert. And they didn't want to work full script. And I said, look, you got to make a concession. I'll write Marvel style, but I'm going to write all the dialogue so that you understand the drama of each sequence. And they both like that.
Okay.
So, but I left everything up to them. I mean, I'm going to tell Johnny Romita Jr. and Joe Kubert how to tell a story. No, I don't think so.
I know. So, since you brought up the Punisher, now I got to ask, what do you think is going on over there with this new Punisher?
I'll tell you, the editorial at Marvel, they just hate the Punisher. They've always hated the Punisher.
Yeah.
And now they just burn him to the ground. I've never seen anything like this ever. There's never been anything like this ever happen in fiction ever, where they just literally totally destroyed a character. And now I hear, they're going to bring him back as another character. Well, you know what happened there? Somebody upstairs said, "What'd you do?
What'd you do to our moneymaker?"
Yeah, you threw the Punisher out of the pool. We make money off that character. He's T-shirts and posters, and we got the TV show. I mean, what the hell are you doing? So they had them bring in a new Punisher. It's like when DC killed Superman, and by the time they did it, it was too late. Licensing came down and says, they canceled the Superman vitamin contract. And they canceled the Superman peanut butter contract because you killed Superman.
I didn't know it. Yeah,
So, I mean, I think that's what happened. I think they thought, oh man, this is great. We're going to get rid of Frank Castle and the Punisher forever. And then somebody on the money end said, what are you doing?
Yeah. The bean counters.
Yeah.
The bean counters called in.
Yeah, this is a business, buddy. Bring that character back.
I was thinking, because now he has like laser guns, and I was wondering. Yeah. Well, is it like they're going to G.I. Joe him? Because now he can be non-lethal. You know what I mean? To sell to children. You know.
Well, I mean, when I completed my first run on the Punisher, they were going to reboot him, and they asked me if I wanted to participate, and I said, well, what's the reboot like? And they said, well, he's going to be kinder and gentler. I said, how does that work? And they said, well, he's not going to kill anybody. He's just going to maim them.
I
said, I don't see how that's kinder and gentler. So he's a sadist. I said, I have no interest in working on that.
And speaking, I feel we should bring this up. You said you get your Punisher urges done these days with your Levon Cade novels. Yeah.
I mean, I like writing about, the good guy outlaw character, which is what the Punisher is. He's works outside the law, and I like the idea. I also like the character who makes his own trouble for himself, and Levon Cade and Frank Castle share that. They both make a lot of trouble for themselves. If they just stay home for a few days, everything is settled down.
They ain't gonna do that.
No, I'm never gonna do that.
There's no fun in that.
I like writing about a character who just simply doesn't think about consequences.
I think it was you who said that like Superman is a child's power fantasy, but Frank Castle, the Punisher, is an adult power fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're a kid, I could fly and I could, impress everybody, and I'd be real strong and I could save everybody and everybody'd love me. And when you grow up, you're like, oh man, I wish somebody'd do something about this. So I wish there was a guy who would go out there and take care of business.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a lot of characters like that. I mean, I think Tony Soprano is like a adult wish fulfillment. Because he doesn't. He and Frank Castle share a lot of traits where they're negative masculine role models who simply don't care what anybody thinks, and they do what they're going to do, and to their own benefit. And I think every guy wishes he could be that way, but but we realize there's a moral compass. People that you're responsible to
on the LIE to work every day. I wish I was the Punisher.
Oh yeah. See, I mean, that's where all my Punisher stories grew out of, like frustrations. I'm in the drive-through line at a fast food restaurant. It's going slow, and I'm like, what if Frank Castle was here? Yeah. What would he do?
I'm going to Manhattan to work on the subway, and this guy gets on, and I know it's going to be trouble. It would be so satisfying, wouldn't it?
It would.
War Duke asks, what's your favorite comic genre to write, and why?
Well, I'm going to say Westerns. I love writing Westerns, either prose or comics. But generally, I mean, it's a lame answer, but whatever genre I'm writing at the time, I'm enjoying. I mean, I don't take jobs I don't want to write. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's probably genres I wouldn't be interested. I'm not particularly interested in fantasy. So that would be a tough one for me.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Even you did a Hobbit, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tolkien, that I'm interested in.
Okay. Yeah.
But to me, Tolkien was the last word. I mean, why anybody ever wrote another medieval fantasy novel, I don't understand.
Yeah. If anybody writing a fantasy novel with dwarves and elves right now, I why bother?
It's all been done. It's like the private eye genre. I mean, what are you going to bring to it that's different?
Oh, okay. I just lost my train of thought because, geez. I'm like stumbling over my words because I'm fanboying out right now. When I say fanboy, I mean I'm an obsessive collector. If I see the name Chuck Dixon on a work, I buy it hands down. I've been that way for 20 years. I followed you from Nightwing. I followed you from Batman. When I started reading Batman, it was Mike W. Barr. Then you shortly right after that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And Jim Aparo doing the artwork. Did you ever work with Jim Aparo?
Yeah. We did a little bit of Green Arrow together, and then this always breaks comics fans' hearts when I say it, but after Jim retired, every once in a while they would throw him something to work on, just to supplement his retirement fund. And it was always me they picked. And so it was fine with me. I want to work with Jim. Jim's just such an awesome dude. And so they would have me write these inventory stories. And so we would do like complete issues of Batman or Detective. They'd be completely done and they'd stick them in a drawer. And and most of them never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
And then one we did, it was an arc about the Joker tangling with Ra's al Ghul. And that sat in a drawer for years before they pulled it out and published it in Legends of the Dark Knight.
Yeah, I heard that the originally Marvel and DC, if you were hired for a year, you did 13 issues just in case there was a problem. And
I always had to write an inventory issue, and then it would be banked. And Scott McDaniel took pride in the fact that he drew all the inventory issues. he drew every script I wrote, until he left the book.
And they're still hidden. They're still in a drawer someplace.
Yeah, why they don't just put them out in big honking black and white collections? I have no idea. There's money there. I mean, I did a Punisher graphic novel with Gary Kwapis, Punisher in the Savage Land. The whole thing is complete. They've never published it.
Oh man!
I mean, it's Frank Castle and Hydra in the Savage Land with dinosaurs and cavemen. And,
that's what comic books are about.
Yeah,
that's what every comic book fan wants.
Yeah, but they don't. It's sitting in a drawer somewhere. They probably completely forgotten about it. But stuff like that happens.
Yeah, I know that Mr. Dr. Masked Retro is asking a question about old Eclipse comics, which are great. Why are you listed as Charles, Chuck, and Buzz?
well, Buzz isn't me. Buzz is a different guy. I started out as Charles, and then it was Cat Ironwood who started crediting me as Chuck. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then when we got to The Hobbit, I said, I want to be credited as Charles again on The Hobbit because The Hobbit adapted by Chuck Dixon, it sounds like a sportscaster's right. It just didn't go along with the look of the book. And I knew they were going to be selling it all around the world. I said, just one last time, just put Charles on it.
I remember Eclipse Comics to me was was one of the first companies that I thought was like important besides Marvel and DC. I thought they were a big deal. They put out a lot of good stuff. I remember you had a Evangeline, yeah, and that company, unfortunately, didn't they have a flood and that put them out of business? Yeah,
they had a flood. It's a real shame because they were going to do this big biography of Steve Ditko, like this big coffee table book.
Yeah, I heard about
and all the galleys got washed away in the flood.
And they probably had to pull teeth to interview Steve Ditko in the first.
They never got to interview Steve.
Oh,
Ditko.
They never did.
But they interviewed his family. I mean, they found out stuff. I mean, I'm a huge Ditko fan. They found out stuff just amazing, all good stuff. I mean, about the guy. But they were a great company to work for, and they really did change the industry because they offered creator rights, and they were a reliable royalty payer and things like that. I mean, I've made more money off The Hobbit to this day than anything else I've ever worked on because it sells around the world. And whoever publishes it has to honor the original Eclipse contract. They have to pay me that royalty percent.
That is great.
Because that Dean was a real warrior for creator rights, and he put his money where his mouth was. And if you see a creator-owned contract today, it's based off the Eclipse contract. All the terms are the same.
Oh,
so he really and it was such an eclectic company. I mean. They were really into comics and they were really into printing, whatever was good. It didn't have to be superheroes.
They published so many different titles.
Oh yeah, I mean Reed Fleming, the world's toughest milkman. I mean stuff like that. I mean they published some awesome stuff. They were totally unlike any other comic book company.
They were, yeah.
And Dean was the most brilliant guerrilla marketer I've ever met in my life. That guy could sell comics to anybody.
And Catherine Ironwood is that's how you pronounce it? That's been a mystery for me for Dick.
Yeah, Cat Ironwood.
Yeah, she is an interesting person too. Like I've been trying to look up her and learn about her. She started off like as a fan letter to Marvel. She wrote like the Book of the Vishanti about Doctor Strange as a kid.
Yeah,
she's so fascinating. Have you have any recollections of her?
Yeah, she was my editor on Airboy for its entire run, and an editor on other stuff. And she and I would lock horns every once in a while because she was a self-avowed communist.
Yeah,
and I'm not. But the thing is, we would have these heated discussions, but at the end, it didn't matter. We went back to doing comics. You know, there was no
back then
personal
people were allowed
rancor.
to disagree.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, as long as I could like guard my corner, she had respect for me. I mean, the very first time I ever worked for her, I submitted a story. It was a horror story for Tales of Terror. And it was typical EC horror story. It's about some, you know, rotten son of a bitch who gets his end, you know, he gets justice in the end in some horrible way. And I had the guy make an anti-Semitic slur. And it's like, this is sort of adding to, it's not a nice guy.
Right.
Well, she calls me. She calls me, and I never talked to her before. And she said, you put that anti-Semitic slur in this story. And this is the first story I ever submitted to them. And I said, yeah. I said, and I explained my reasoning. And she said, well, do you know that I'm Jewish? And I said, well, do you know that it wouldn't have made any difference to me if I'd known that? And then she went, oh, okay. And then everything was fine after that. You know,
okay. Yeah.
She couldn't do enough for me. You know,
a little test to see if you stand your ground, I guess, right?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, it wouldn't have changed my story. You know, I don't write for the editor. You know, I write for the story, and it just made sense to me. So, but we got along great after that.
Oh, good. The
only time she would get upset at me is if she saw me writing something for Marvel or another company that she thought was as good as Airboy. She said, you're not saving your best stuff for us.
Yeah. She's, as far as I know, she's not writing any comics anymore. Neither one of them are, right?
No. Dean is he doesn't live too far from me in Tampa. And he's just sort of he's working on that new edition of Terry and the Pirates, that big oversized collection of Terry and the Pirates from Clover Press. So that's all he's really doing. That's his first love, is those old comic strips.
Yeah. I guess I hate the word nostalgia because it has like a, I don't know, like a, it's over with kind of connotation. But I do have a fondness for Eclipse comics. Really big. All of those old, like, you remember PC Comics and Eclipse and Comico, all those companies that kind of came and went.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really vibrant time because of the direct market. Everybody was diving into it,
right,
and making money. I mean, the sales were fantastic on a lot of these things.
Right.
You know, and then we cruise on into the 90s, and it just explodes all over the place. Sales are nuts then, but there was room for everybody because there was a big comic book reading public that they just wanted content.
Yeah,
and the downfall of it was the concentration on superheroes, I think.
Again, I think it was you that said it, that it is kind of bizarre that a whole medium, a whole genre, a whole form of entertainment is based on super. It's like turning on TV and there's only nurse television shows.
Right.
Right. You know, and
they wonder why manga's eating their lunch. You know.
Yeah. Manga. Yeah. I'm one of 7 children. And I'm the only one without kids. And every one of my brothers and sisters has like 5 kids. And now those kids have kids. And they're all reading manga. And not one of them is reading comic books.
No, because
they like comic books. They come over and they look at my comic book collection. But these characters don't mean anything to them. No. And they're getting tattoos of people that I don't know. I just don't know it. I understand it's good stuff, but I just don't know it.
Well, I mean, there's a manga for almost anybody's interest. I mean, if you like baseball, if you like making quilts, I mean, there's probably a manga for you. It's not. I mean, my favorite manga, I can never read it because it's never been translated. It's about fishermen. They're anglers and deep sea fishermen. It's just a fantastic comic. Even though I can't read it, I can tell what's going on.
Yeah, good storytelling.
Good storytelling. The art is gorgeous, and it's like, you know. Here, it's like superheroes are nothing. I mean, where's the horror comics? Where's the war comics? You know, where's the comics for kids? And I mean, not the kind of that pander to kids.
Right. I'm a big fan of all ages comics, and I think that's kind of a lost art these days. You know, when I see an all ages comic, I sing the praises because, you know, I joke around. I say we got to be like drug dealers. We got to get the kids. You know, give them a taste. You know, and we're not doing that. You know, I'm sure you know better than me. The average age of comic book fans is getting older and older and older.
I had a friend, and he's in the model trains, and I was over at his house, and I had to wait there for a while for some reason. All of his magazines are about model railroading, and every single issue had a thing: how to get your grandchildren interested in model railroading, how to get your children interested in model railroading. It's like, at least they understand they got to keep this hobby going if they want to keep doing it. But they've skipped a couple of generations in American comics because they simply stopped. Once upon a time, kids outgrew comics, and then you had a new audience, and then you had to do something to keep that new audience, and they haven't done that at all. They're just happy with the audience they have as it ages out.
Yeah,
eventually dies.
I think in a way the direct market was kind of the death of that, because who goes into a comic book store going, you know what, I think today I'm gonna get into comic books today, and they just wake up and walk into a comic. Nobody does that.
Nobody's ever gone into a comic shop cold unless it was like by mistake.
Yeah. The only time I worked at a comic book store my whole high school years, and the only time people came in cold was when the Nam came out, and it was Vietnam vets coming in.
Oh, okay.
Comics, and they came in for a couple of weeks. I mean, a couple of months, and then they lost interest or what have you. But that was the only time I saw people coming in cold. Because
I can tell you from the royalty statements I used to get, newsstand was the thing, man. All my sales were on the newsstand.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's more newsstand than comic book stores. I never thought of that,
Well, yeah, I mean, there was just more people buying them. I mean, if I was selling 40,000 of a comic in direct, I was selling 150,000 on the newsstand. So the bulk of my income was from newsstand comics. And then they're talking about, we're going to concentrate more on the direct market. Like, why? And all the retailers are saying that the newsstand's taking business away from them. I said, no, the newsstand is the entry to their business.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to have all these kids buying comics, and maybe 10% of them are really going to get into it, and they're going to want more, and then they're going to come to your shop. But if that 10% never sees a comic book, they ain't never coming in because they don't give a damn.
Believe it or not, what changed my mind about that was I've been listening to Pandora at work, and I hear a new band, and I'm like, oh wow, this is a good sound. I like this, and then I go and buy the album.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but I never would have bought that album if I didn't hear it for free, on Pandora, so, and then I talking like that with other comic book fans. And one of my friends said, that's the newsstand, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You go in and you bought some bizarre comic book about whatever. And then next thing you know, you're like, I want to get more of this. Oh, I saw issue 3 and I saw issue 6. Where was 4 and 5? They're at the comic book store,
Yeah, I mean that's the way it was when I first started getting the fandom. If you missed an issue, you had to look for the ads in the back of the comic where you'd mail away to some guy. Do you have this?
I remember when I missed an issue as a kid, I had I would actually volunteer to go food shopping with my parents because there was a cigar store near the supermarket. And this guy never returned comics. So you went in there, and there was piles and piles of, and
that's the place I dreamed of when I was a kid.
Yeah, there was piles of comics, and here's the kicker: there was also Playboy magazines there, so I could pretend I'm looking at Fantastic Four, and I'm looking at something I shouldn't be looking at. And then my mother would come, I'd grab the issues that I want. You know what I mean?
Wow.
The 70s were a different place.
Yeah. I mean, my dad used to, he used to take scrap metal to the junkyard. And he'd take me along with him, and the junk man would always say, "Oh, there's a barrel of comics over here." It'd be literally a barrel of comics. I mean, and my dad would always go, "Don't take too many," and because I would go out like armload.
Of course, yeah. Dad,
I got
help me over here.
I got the first Batman 80-page giant out of that barrel.
And I'm an electrician, so I'm always going to the scrapyard, and the guy there says, he's a garbage man, and John. He's giving me now. Most of these comics I don't want to touch because they're all moldy, but every once in a while, it is a good guy. I love the newsstand. It was fun to go and look for stuff, and and like I said, I'd go to this place to look for this, go to this place look, and then you found it. It was like an achievement. It was fun.
Well, I mean, and the difference was you didn't know what was coming out on the newsstand. No. I mean, going into the news. You can't replicate that moment when I went into the drugstore and there was Captain America on the cover of the Avengers. I went, whoa! And you could go to the newsstand and there'd be a whole new comic book company you never heard of.
Right, yeah. You know, my friend Carl would be like, "Oh, I got Avengers Annual #7." I was like, "I didn't even know that came out yet." Oh, and you know what I mean? And you running around looking for it, and you'd lord it over your friends. I got the second part of the Submariner fight in the Fantastic Four, and you don't.
I remember driving my sisters and my parents nuts because in the back of a Marvel comic, they had Fantastic Four Annual #1, and it said on sale now, which of course probably wasn't true.
Right. Right.
I drove them crazy till they found that thing.
And I remember the very first time I went to a comic book store, right in front, they had the glass counter, and they had Amazing Fantasy 15, X-Men #1, and Fantastic Four #1, $60 a piece. And I remember going, who would ever spend $60 on a comic book?
I remember my first comic book convention pulling EC comics out of the boxes at $5. Oh man, I'm not paying that.
I got something maybe you would appreciate. I went into a comic book store that was closing down. Every issue of the Thunder Agents for $1.
Oh man, that's what I mean. I went to the drugstore and there's the Thunder Agents. Like, who are these guys?
Yeah, I've been wanting to get them for so long, and then this poor store got out. Everything's $1. You better believe I was climbing over boxes. You know, I felt bad. I felt like I was stealing. You know,
no, they just wanted to get rid of the inventory.
All they wanted to sell was Magic and Pikachu cards or whatever. So they wanted to get the comic books were taking up too much room.
Well, that's like I went to a garage sale a couple of years ago with one of my boys. And this guy had long boxes full of comics, and they're all bagged and boarded, and they're all from the 90s. And it was all crap he couldn't give away. And the guy had like comic book price guide prices on him. I was like, nobody's ever going to pay this for these. And then I said, do you have any other comics? And he goes, oh, yeah, I got it was like a washing machine box full of comics. And they were just thrown in, not bagged, not boarded. I pulled out a complete run of Weird War comics.
Oh, my God.
I came home, and I'm like, I filled in my collection. So now I got a complete collection. And the extras I sold for like $400 on eBay.
Oh my God!
You know, this guy's like, you had gold here, man. You didn't even know it.
Yeah, I get the opposite a lot because I'm known as the comic book guy at work, and then guys are like, "Oh, I got Green Lantern #1." I'm like, "No, you don't." He's like, "Yeah, I do. Take a picture of it," and it's like Emerald Dawn from 1996. I'm like,
right.
75. And the sad story that I tell is one of my buddies. I love him, and he's going through a bad divorce and he just needs some cash. And he's like, I'll sell you my comic book collection. And I'm like, okay. So he brings in a long box, and it's stuff from the 90s that I got 3 copies of each, you know, and to me, it's worth $100, but he's my buddy. So I offer him $300, and he just looked at me like I insulted him. He's like, maybe I'll just keep him and I'll give him to my kids. I'm like, yeah, that's probably the best. You know,
probably better.
Everybody thinks they have a fortune because it's 20 years old, you know?
I mean, when people start telling me about my uncle's got a bunch of comics in his garage, I'm like, I don't even want to hear anymore. I don't even want to, because you're never going to let me know what they are. You can't remember any of the titles. I'm assuming it's your uncle. They're from the 50s and 60s. I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
I always want to hear it because I don't know. I don't know. And then my grandmother once, God bless her heart, she was going a little daffy in her 90s, and she goes, "Oh, John, I was walking around the block and I saw this person was throwing away a big stack of comic books, and I was going to pick them up for you, but there was too many. I couldn't pick them up, but they were only worth 12 cents."
See, that's why I don't want to hear it.
Let's go. Where is this? But knowing my grandmother, that was a week ago. That was 6 years ago. It never happened. So
that's why I don't want to hear about it, because I'm never going to see them. I'm just going to wonder, what the hell was that?
Oh, my God. I'll never forget that. They were only worth 12 cents. I'm like, oh, my God. I wanted to ask you, when I was a kid, my mom and dad read comic books like everybody. My mom and dad are long gone. That they were little kids during World War II, and my mom, she used to love Mary Marvel. She made she must have been the first cosplayer in the world, dressing up like Mary Marvel. And my father, he would do Superman and everything like that. And then when girls stopped reading comic books. Somewhere in the 60s, I would imagine. 60s, maybe early. Do you have any theories about that? Why did the comic companies chase them away? Did women?
The comic companies chased them away because they also chased away people that wanted to read westerns and war stories, because what happened was all the guys that created all the comics, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and guys like that, I mean, they were working professionals, right? They weren't comic fans to begin with. They found this niche and they enjoyed the work, and so they did it. But they're followed by guys who were fans.
Right.
Like you have fans who are basically hanging around DC and Marvel until they finally hire some of them. And now they're running the show. And all they cared about was superheroes. And so they turned everything to superheroes. And like in the 70s, they basically killed the golden calf. Because in the 70s, the biggest selling titles at DC were Jonah Hex and Sergeant Rock. And people look at me like, oh, that's not possible. Yes, it was. They were the big sellers
too. Excellent.
And what they did was they found the Filipino artists who would work for next to nothing. They began having them do those comics. Nothing against the Filipino artists. They are great artists, but they had no feel for war or Western comics. No feel whatsoever. And so the readers, they're not stupid. They became less and less satisfied with the output. And the sales of Jonah Hex and Sergeant Rock and GI Combat all waned. And that's when DC went into the implosion, because the superhero comics weren't selling either.
Oh.
And DC came close to going out of business. I mean, they laid off half their staff. It was bleak times. And same thing was going on at Marvel. But Marvel, Stan was smarter, because Stan started what he called plateau marketing. Because he said, we're going to have comics for the younger set, but then we're going to move them up to Savage Sword of Conan and the black and white horror magazines. So we're going to keep this audience by maturing the level of comics. And that was smart, because that kept those magazines kept Marvel afloat during the bad times. But that's what happened. The fans took over. Thank God, the fan running Marvel was Roy Thomas and loved Conan. So it wasn't all superheroes, because I mean you turn off a readership like that, and you can't just sell one thing when you're a publisher.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I loved superheroes. That was it. I wanted comic books. To me was the ultimate medium for superheroes, because like right. I'd watch war movies with my dad and I loved them, and I'd watch westerns with my dad and I loved them. But I always thought like movies and TV was the best medium for war movies. But comic books, nothing until recently. You couldn't do the special effects, right. So I avoided war comics and westerns as a kid. And I tell you now, I'm kicking myself, because I'm reading the DC war comics, and I'm reading the DC, like Jonah Hex. I can't get enough of that. Oh, the Michael Fleischer Jonah Hexes are just amazing stuff.
And early 70s DC war comics don't get better than that. This was Joe Kubert, Russ Heath, John Severin, Alex Toth, all working at the peak of their abilities and being allowed to experiment with storytelling. I mean, those comics are freaking awesome.
They are. Yeah. You said that in one of your Wednesday Chuck Dixon videos, and I was like, I got to take this guy's word for it. Chuck Dixon thinks I knows what he's talking about. And
the thing is, at the same time, over on the superhero end, they're just doing the same old thing.
At the same time, I wouldn't touch the DC superhero stuff in like 1974. To me, it was like a little too hokey, as a kid raised on Marvel. And it wasn't until the Teen Titans and Legion of Superheroes before I started getting interested in DC's superhero stuff, the early Jim Shooter stuff. But he was writing like Marvel style,
right.
like serials and like with like a soap opera.
Well, DC, they just refused to learn from Marvel's success in the early days. I mean, they thought that Marvel comics were like poorly put together and just lowbrow crap. And it's like, well, all comics are lowbrow crap, but Marvel's at least had a passion. There was something there. There was deeper characterization, and the characters are more interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas DC was still dealing with basically like riddle stories. Where why did Jimmy turn into a werewolf?
Yeah, right.
That kind of stuff. They were so slow to catch up, because they just wouldn't acknowledge what Marvel was doing.
It's a shame, because I'm reading these Jonah Hex comics and these war comics, and then it's like there's a reason why we don't go and revisit our old ex-girlfriends. There's a reason why we broke up. And I'll pick up like a Marvel comic and I'm like, this is it. Like, it took me 10 seconds to read this comic. There's no words in it. There's no backgrounds. You know, I believe that, and again, you're the expert, but I believe like Denny O'Neil's death was like at the end of an era of
absolutely was.
You know, I think like he was like the bookend, and we're never going to see quality like we used to see, you know. And I know you had a relationship with Denny O'Neil, you know, in your Batman and the
yeah,
whole...
I mean, it ended with his retirement. When he retired from comics, that was it. I mean, Archie Goodwin had passed. Denny leaves. Larry Hama's no longer involved. You know, all that last remnant. I mean, like the last guy standing was like Mike Carlin, and you know, but all that old guard was gone, and they got replaced by, you know, editors that were largely indifferent to comics. They weren't that interested in creating quality product. They were more interested in inner office politics and their own careers.
Yeah, I think I'll even be even harsher. I think they're like man babies, you know. these new editors, they don't have kids. They didn't fight in wars. They, you know, they don't probably have mortgages. They probably have like 17 roommates, you know.
Right.
You know? They don't live in the real world, you know. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
What do they have to offer me? A construction worker. I'm waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, and you know, and then I read a comic book, and it's Spider-Man drinking coffee with She-Hulk talking. I want to see Dr. Doom blowing stuff up.
yeah. I mean, you want to see the big stuff. I mean, you know, like Larry Hama said, comics are grand opera. They're big stuff. They're an immediate experience. Every page has to delight. And I look at modern comics, American comics, and say none of these pages delight. They're just, I'm either being preached at, or it's just boring. You know, it's the kind of crap I don't watch on TV. Why would I want it in comics?
Yeah. I keep now that I brought it up, but everybody keeps saying, well, comic books were always political. You know, what do you say to that?
That's just simply not true. I mean, I've talked about this on my show, where the closest thing to politics comics got was populism.
Okay.
You know, they gave the people what they wanted. Because I hear them say, well, you know, Superman went after crooked landlords. Well, who likes crooked landlords? How is that political?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, we stand for crooked landlords. You know, they're great. They're awesome people. They have the right to cheat you. Nobody says that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's all
beat up wife beaters in the beginning. Yeah. Wife beaters excellent.
yeah. I mean, it's like Captain America punched Hitler. Yeah, well, everybody wanted to punch Hitler. How is that political? I mean, there was no argument in the United States over whether Hitler was a bad guy. But to introduce, you know, all the politics they do now, and to these people, everything is political. Literally, the air we breathe is political. What we eat is political. What we wear is political. You know, where we decide to put our pee is political. I mean, I
was told by Hillary Clinton to vote differently to change the weather.
Yeah. How's that happen? How are you going to? And the thing is, the frightening thing is, they think they can do that, and it's like, please don't try and affect the weather. Please leave the weather alone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at, they have these massive forest fires in Canada. Like, nobody's seen anything like this before, and this smoke comes down. Now, I was up in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago. Yeah,
it was bad.
The sky was not blue.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
I mean, you saw it even worse.
My wife thought the house was on fire. It was so bad. We were checking everything, you know. Oh, God.
But this is a week after the news has stopped talking about it. You know, well, they've moved on to something else now. And I'm like, there's no blue sky. And we drove from Pennsylvania to Florida. I didn't see blue sky till North Carolina. And it was hard to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, we went out for a walk, and I'm like, oh, I got to sit down. I'm like, I do the elliptical every day. I shouldn't be out of breath. But they don't talk about it in the news because it's not in the news anymore. And then a week later, they're talking about all the torrential rainfall the Northeast is getting. And I'm like, it's the forest fires. It's all the particulates in the air. Of course you're going to get, oh, it's climate change. No, it's the forest fires.
It's forest fires.
I mean, it's like after a volcanic eruption, what does the area get? Torrential rainfall.
Yeah,
happens every time.
The fourth age stops in and says, "Great point, John." I just thought about this. RJ from the Fourth Age. I know you were on his channel a while ago. You had a good talk with him. He's got Mike Gustovich working for him. Can you believe that?
Wow.
You know, Mike Gustovich is going to be putting out his Rampaging Thor comic in the Valiant Heroes. Can you believe that guys like Mike Gustovich and Walt Simonson actually went to Marvel and said, we're ready for work, and Marvel said, that nobody wants that old stuff anymore.
Now, when's the last time you saw a Jerry Ordway comic? That guy's better than he's ever been.
Oh my God,
and that's the thing, is it's not even politics at this point. They just don't want those guys. I mean, Jerry Ordway is a bleeding heart liberal. He probably wouldn't mind me saying that. But what a fantastic artist. Why doesn't he have a month?
Oh yeah, he's like the gold standard of comic book art.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like
Superman. I feel like standing up and saluting.
Absolutely, and he's a good writer. I mean, he's an all-around terrific comic book creator. But he doesn't have work, and he's just one of an army. And that's where crowdfunding comes in. I mean, all these underemployed or unemployed comic artists, get to go back to comics. I mean, when I hear about guys who are like top talents and they're making a living doing commissions. Now they're making a decent living doing commissions, but how long can that last? And wouldn't you rather be drawing comics?
Yeah.
Than just drawings for some fans.
Yeah, I let me ask you this: how do you think crowdfunding is it change? I know the industry's in flux right now. This is a weird period. Anybody getting into comic books right now, I kind of feel bad for them. But do you think crowdfunding is the future? Do you think something will arise?
No, crowdfunding is not the future. It's a step toward the future.
Okay.
With independent creators, it's like the garage band of comics.
That's a good analogy.
It's like everybody's making comics, and if you can sell them, you can sell them. And the thing is that the only successful ones, which is why they lump us all together in Comicsgate, are the non-woke creators. Because there's been woke creators who have tried to crowdfund and fallen flat on their faces because the audience is like, no, we don't want that stuff. That's what we walked away from. We don't want more of that. We want just standard good guy. I call it blue sky entertainment. I told Eric, all your books are like blue sky entertainment. There's an optimism there. There's there's patriotism. There's the rule of law. There's direct line between good and evil. Your characters are well adjusted and like themselves. And your stories make sense. And this is what audiences want. Now, I'm involved with a company. Graham Nolan and I are involved with the company. We're part of the company called Spin Rack.
Right.
And we're trying to move this thing into the next generation, into Comics 3.0. By we're setting it up so we can offer these independent creators a different outlet where we'll create computer games and mobile games based on their characters. We'll offer their stuff digitally. We'll put them in the pipeline for TV and movie deals and things like that. And the people we're working with are just top of their game as far as tech, Hollywood, financing, all the rest of it. And we've been working on that for I think it's like 2 years, but we're just starting to roll stuff out. But I think that's the next step where all of these creators join together. Not to create a company, because they'll still be publishing their own stuff and selling it, but this will handle marketing to take them to a wider audience.
Cool. That sounds fun. That sounds interesting. Yeah. I just find it that Walt Simonson, Marvel says, nah, people don't want Walt Simonson anymore. I was
who says people don't want Walt Simonson?
I want Walt Simonson.
Yeah.
I want Walt Simonson drawing everything.
I mean, there was a time Walt Simonson walked in and said, "I want to work for you." They would be dancing in the hallways.
Right.
I mean, they used to steal artists from each other, and all the time. And now it's like they just hand it to, I guess their former college roommate or something.
Now, do you think is it because it can't be that nobody wants this? Do you think they just can't afford these guys anymore?
Well, they probably can't pay the rates these guys are used to.
Right.
But there's other ways to do it. You could offer the guy participation in the character. I mean, I've done jobs where it's like, okay, I want X amount per page unless I get a piece of it. If you give me 5% of a movie that might get made, I'll lower my rate.
Okay.
And I've made deals like that all the time. where, this is an interesting project. I want to work on it, but if you can't afford my page rate, you got to give me a piece of it. And some guys balk. Oh, I don't want to give you anything. Well, you're not giving me anything because you haven't made anything yet. If you don't make a dime, I don't get a dime. But if you make $100, I want 10 of it. Is that too much to ask? I mean, I'm not asking for anything until after you're profitable. But a lot of guys, I mean, Eric offers participation. Most of these crowdfunding guys offer, bonuses and things like that. And it's a much better deal. Now, Marvel, when you create something for them, you're completely screwed.
Yeah.
They give you nothing.
Right. Why would anybody, let's pretend I work from home. Why would I come up with a new character? What incentive is there? When
I wanted to work for DC and they told me about the participation program, like you'll get a percentage of action figures, toys, T-shirts, movie, TV, blah, 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 blah. I've signed contracts for, I think, 250 characters, gadgets, locations, all kinds of stuff. And I get checks from DC based on this. I mean, they used the Iceberg Lounge in the new Batman movie. Sent me a check.
Oh, cool. Bane must be giving you a pretty penny.
Well, they could have paid us more on that Dark Knight ride. We had to get some lawyers in the room on that one. We didn't get anywhere near what we should have gotten. I mean, Graham always says that if Paramount made Dark Knight Rises, we'd both be millionaires.
It's funny. Whenever I see Bane, I always, if he took off the mask, I always picture it would be Grant underneath it. He's a big guy. Speaking of which, I love his Monsterverse comics are awesome. I just read Joe Frankenstein. You and him wrote that. That was awesome. Right.
Yeah, we're getting ready to do a continuation.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's one thing I like about crowdfunding comics right now is I grew, like I said before, I grew up reading all the superhero stuff, but now there's monster comics coming out, there's detective comics, there's supernatural comics, and I find it's a weird age, but it's also kind of like a golden age of comics. But it takes a lot of effort, and I wonder, like I used to be into punk rock the way I'm into comic books, and my friend is still he's 50 years old, he still goes to all the shows, and he tells me there's still so many good bands, right? But I don't have the energy to look for them anymore. I feel that's the same thing going on with comics. There's amazing comics right now, but it's almost kind of like I was looking the wrong way and I missed this, and I was looking that way and I missed that. And I just wish there was like a, maybe that's what Spin Rack could do. Just help everyone.
Yeah. I mean, basically like a clearinghouse, a place you can go and look at all of them. I miss stuff too. And it's like, wow, how did I not see that?
Yeah. Sometimes somebody posts something. I'm like, that was made for me? How did I not see that?
And then you try to find it, and you got to pay an arm and a leg because it was a low print run. And,
and I'm sure all comic book collectors are a little obsessive. Like I'll discover something on issue 6, and I'm like, well, I can't find issue 1. I guess I'm not getting it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. You want to be there from the beginning.
Yeah. Or I'll pay extra for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I can't find it, then, or worse, the second printing.
But I mean, you're looking at these crowdfunding comics and they had successful campaigns, but there might only be 2,000 copies in print.
Yeah.
Those things are going to, be costly.
It's just Kevin Ryan. Does Spin Rack have a website?
Well, Spin Rack website is there's a Spin Rack website, spinrack.io. We're going to be changing it. It's under construction. An interesting thing is you can go to Discord. You can join Discord and go to spinrack.io. And Graham and I are there critiquing artwork, and so many people are contributing, pencil artwork and inking and things like that. And we've been basically tutoring, and we've seen some really cool stuff from some of these newbie wannabe comic book artists. But that's a place you can go right now that community is growing.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah. It's close to an hour now. I don't want to take up your time. I appreciate that you came. I'm still I'm still glowing that you showed up.
Well, look, I ran into Harvey Kurtzman at a convention one time. I babbled like an idiot. I didn't articulate one word that made any sense. And he was so generous. He smiled and he shook my hand, like you would with a backward child. And so I know where you're coming from. I don't know why I inspire this, but
I like I said, I've been you've been the guy whose name's been on the comic books that I love for decades, so I appreciate them. I love them, hours upon hours of entertainment and fun and excitement, and then to actually have a conversation with that guy. This is what, to me, the internet was invented for.
Yeah.
Not cat videos, not chicks, meeting comic book people, and having fun conversations.
This is good because I get to meet people I normally wouldn't meet, and you get to have conversations that you can't have at a convention or a place like that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. My coworker, his next door neighbor was John Romita Sr. And
wow.
He said to me, John, is this guy a big deal? And I was like, what are you kidding me? Because you want to meet him? I was like, yes, I want to meet him. So I actually got to go to his house and we had like lunch. His wife is cooking, and I'm sitting out. I'm at the table where he drew Spider-Man, and he must have thought I was crazy when I left because I couldn't talk, I was like, it was, so yeah. I'm doing better with you than I did with John Romita Sr.
I'll tell you, my favorite fan meeting of Comic Book God story was Tony Bedard, comic book writer. When he was a kid, his parents went out to LA and he thought, oh, we're in LA. I want to meet Jack Kirby. And so he looks up Jack Kirby in the phone book and calls. I mean, he's like, 13, 14 years old. Calls Jack Kirby. Kirby answers. He says, I want to show you my artwork. I want to come by and meet you. And Kirby's like, oh, okay, well, I'll have Roz make lunch for us. So his parents drop him off at this total stranger's house. He has lunch with Jack Kirby out by the pool. Roz made lunch. And he says, would you look at my artwork? And so Jack's looking at Tony's artwork. Tony wanted to be a comic book artist. He's a great comic book writer now. Looks at it. And Tony says, what do you think? And Jack says, you'll always be a good-looking kid.
That's a great story.
I love that story.
It's funny. My mother went to a Mike Carlin's wedding. Believe it or not, a coworker was friends with the woman that Mike Carlin married, and she goes, "Oh, my son wants to be a comic book artist. I can't draw a stick figure, you know what I mean?" So he was all nice. What are you going to say at a wedding to some lady? Right. Oh, send him my whatever it's called, a resume with the artwork, a portfolio.
Right.
I'm like, Mom, I love you, but and then she would, did you ever send it to him? Mom, he was being nice.
Yeah.
I love that's a great story. You'll always be a good-looking kid. Now, could you imagine? That's the way comic book creators were back then.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like John Romita Sr. Yeah, granted, his next door neighbor of 20 years vouched for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but John Romita Sr., he was a sweetheart to everyone.
Right. He my Pete, the guy I work with, he told me that guys would knock on his door all the time, and he would let them in and talk to him about stuff and. He was giving away. He had a whole shelf full of like omnibuses that he was giving away to fans and everything. Now, can you imagine if I knocked on Dan Slott's door? What kind of welcome do you think I would get?
I don't think you'd have lunch by the pool.
No. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way comic book professionals are behaving today. It's like. I loved Astro City, that comics, one of my favorite comic books. And then I finally get on Twitter. I started a channel where I talk about comics. I raved about Astro City. And then I got the idea that, like, you know what? I'm just going to ask comic creators like yourself to come and talk to me. And fortunately, some people, they were politely declined or whatever. I go to Twitter, Kurt BS, I'm blocked. I'm on Twitter for like a month. How am I blocked? I never had an interaction with this guy, and I was gonna gush about his freaking comic book. So then I go to Dan Slott. This was before I knew about it. I have 6 or 7 photographs of me and Dan Slott with our arm around each other
right.
Conventions because I really did like his She-Hulk run. I thought it was clever,
right?
And my wife used to say, "You're this Dan Slott fanboy." I'm the only person on the planet Earth that has a full collection of Savage Dragon comics. I'm blocked by Eric Larson.
Wow.
I just, Jack Kirby said at a party, like, what is your job? And Jack Kirby said, my job is to sell comics.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, sell comics.
Yeah, I don't understand the animosity over like who you voted for. I mean, I don't care who you voted for. Like I said, Cat Ironwood was a self-avowed communist. Right. And we got along great. Denny O'Neil, big bleeding heart New York liberal. We got along great.
Right. I remember he said he had a hard time writing The Question because he couldn't understand the conservative mindset.
Right. Well, no, they can never understand the conservative mind. We understand them. They'll never understand us.
Yeah.
I mean, I had an editor once. We were putting a project together, and there was an artist. You're in the office talking about something, and it's always like whoever's there, gets the job. And there was an artist that I really liked. I really liked his work. And he was like, well, that sounds interesting. Would you mind if I worked on that? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're perfect for this project, right? He leaves, and the editor says to me, are you sure you want to work with him? And I said, well, why not? I've known him a long time. And he goes, well, he's gay. I said, well, everybody knows he's gay. Yeah. What difference does that make? You're a conservative. I'm like, what the hell do you think a conservative is?
Right. They have this monstrous opinion of conservatives.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what? I've known him longer than I've known you. What do you think a conservative is?
Right.
We're like the worst people on the planet.
See, is my theory, if I may get political, is that, when I was 17, 18 years old, I was a liberal. Now I'm 50 and I'm a conservative. So I understand the liberal thinking.
Yeah.
If you're 50 years old and you're still liberal, you've never went through, so you don't understand, we're monsters. They build the straw man in their head. Meanwhile, so that's my theory, is because we were, what's the expression? If you're under 30 and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. And if you're over 30 and you're not a conservative, you have no brain. It's simplistic, but it makes a good point.
Well, I wouldn't know. I put out yard signs for Goldwater when I was 10. So but I went to public school, so I ran into a lot of left wingers.
I dated a girl in college who she got, what's his name, the autograph, that conservative speaker. No. When she was 12 years old. Wow. Now I can't even remember his name. The talk show host. But I was like, when you were 12, she was always like, as bad as I ever got, she was 100 times. She owns her own business. She's a millionaire. But there you go. Oh, one last thing, if you don't mind talking.
Sure.
Did you see all of that Comics Broke Me stuff on Twitter?
The what?
Okay, you're smart if you're avoiding Twitter. But last week or 2 weeks ago, it was all of these comic book professionals telling their stories about how comics broke them. And it was all professionals. It was writers of the X-Men, writers of the Avengers, artists at Marvel, artists at D, telling their horrible stories about how they can't afford their rent. Their bills are piling up. And the funny thing is, like, all the Comicsgate people, all the crowdfunding people, their Comics Broke Me stories were, comics broke me out of poverty. I'm making six figures now. I'm comics broke me out of my shell, and I'm talking to people, and I just find it so funny that the professionals were all miserable. The people that are complaining about Eric July and Ethan Van Sciver and probably you, and I bet you now me. I hope I'm a target. That means I made it, right? And all the bad people are happy. I just found that to be, I don't know, Schadenfreude is the correct term, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like every time in the 80s and 90s when there was actually money in comics, the subject of unionizing freelancers would come up every once in a while. And, they would send around these things saying, well, at this next convention, we're going to have a panel about unionization and everything else. They would send these newsletters out, and all the people that were for it, they were all listed on the last page of the newsletter. And people would say to me, would you join the union or whatever? And I said, look at that list of names. I said, we know all these people. And what do we know about them? They've never read a deadline in their lives. They're all deadbeats. They may be comic book professionals, but nobody wants them. And that's why they want a union. Because that would protect them, and their laziness, as so many unions do for so many workers. And it would punish people who worked hard and reward people who didn't work at all. And that's where you are. I mean, comics didn't break me. I still love comics. I always found a way to make it work. and I never specialized, so I could write any kind of comic book about anything you can think of.
Yeah, I first discovered you writing about a World War II pilot in a magic plane.
Right.
And then you went to the Punisher, and
I mean, I had an artist one time I ran into at a convention, and we had both worked for Denny O'Neil at various times. And you worked for Denny, and I'm like, yeah. And he goes railing on about Denny. And Denny was this, and Denny was that. And I said, how much money did you make off of those books you did for him? All those royalties, all those jobs he gave you, all those years. I mean, you owe him more respect than that. It's like after Jim Shooter got fired at Marvel in the 80s, a bunch of editors were standing in the hallway, and Larry Hama's standing with them, and I'm there. It's freelancer day. I'm there, right? I'm fly on the wall. And all these editors, man, they're ranking on Jim Shooter. They're telling awful stories about Jim Shooter, how much they hate Jim Shooter. And then they turn to Larry. And Larry really did have a reason to dislike Jim Shooter. I won't tell that story, but he really did. But Larry wasn't joining in. And one of them said, well, what about you? You have more reason to dislike Shooter than any of us. And Larry said, he gave me my job here, and I owe him that respect.
Wow, that's a professional.
And they all, shrunk down to the little men they were.
Yeah, what are you going to say to that? You can't.
Yeah, that's mic drop, man.
And Larry Hama was he was harsh to work with, like not mean or anything, but he had a high standard of demands, right? Like
he was tough at the beginning. If you made it through Larry Hama basic training, he couldn't do enough for you. He's one of the greatest guys I ever worked for. But those first few jobs, he put you through the test of fire because he wanted to know, under pressure, will you still deliver? Can you take criticism, even harsh criticism, without taking it personal? I mean, he said terrible things to people. He told Lee Weeks called him on the phone one time and said, I want to come in and show you my portfolio. And Larry said, don't bother, you suck. And Lee's like, where'd you see my work? He goes, I've never seen your work. I can tell talking to you on the phone you suck. And then Lee said, I never went to him. I said, that was your mistake. You should have shown up at Marvel the next day with your portfolio. Yeah, made him look at it because that's what he was looking for. Did you have the balls to come in there? Because when I first talked to him, I called him on the phone because I heard he was looking for writers, and I said, he said, why should I hire you? Or why should I look at your stuff? I said, Larry, you need me. And he goes, why the hell do I need you? I never even heard of you. And I said, well, most writers don't know which end of a gun the bullets come out of, right? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, I do. I said, I'll do the homework. And he says, well, you send me some stuff and I'll see if I need you. And I sent him about a dozen pitches. He bought 6 of them. And then that was it. And then he had a few minor criticisms on my first scripts, and then he couldn't do enough for me. He went to every Marvel editor and said, this guy hands his work in on time, his stories make sense, his characters are likable, and you should hire him. And only Archie Goodwin listened to him.
He was another one. Everybody loves Archie Goodwin.
Archie was incredible. He could do it all, man. He was just an incredible talent. He taught me how to write comics.
Yeah, I love Archie. I wanted to ask you about Jim Shooter. You mentioned Jim Shooter to most professionals that they physically wince, and all I know about Jim Shooter is the comics as a kid. That was the high point of Marvel. I loved the Jim Shooter years. I found myself whenever I do comics on my channel, 9 times out of 10 they're from Jim Shooter era. And my theory is because he was a strict dad, and before that you had like Roy Thomas and everybody else. It's like, hand in whatever you want. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were changing editors in chiefs like other people change underwear.
Yeah,
because nobody wanted the job, nobody got serious about it, nobody could. They were all friends. So you go, I can't be hard on my friend. And here comes Shooter out of nowhere. He's not friends with anybody, and he's like, you got to hand this stuff in on time. We got to get on schedule. We got to do this. We got to do that. And my way or the highway. It's what's called leadership, and they resented him for it. And you hear stories about him being hard on people. But the person telling the story is like, well, I probably would have wanted to kick your ass too. And then I hear these amazing stories of his generosity, these wonderful things he would. I mean, he ran into Larry Stroman through Alien Legion for years. Yeah, Larry Stroman is super talent. Larry wasn't interested in comics. He didn't draw comics. He's selling portraits on the street in Boston at some art fair. and Shooter's there for a convention or something. And he sees these portraits and he goes, "Did you ever think of working in comics?" He goes, "No, I read them when I was a kid." And he goes, "Here's my card. Give me a call.
Oh, I never knew that.
And come to New York. I want to see you draw some comic books." And I mean, that's a bad guy. And the thing is, he turned Marvel from a backwater company that they're always looking to sell into something profitable. I mean, this whole Marvel cinematic universe that he started with him.
Yep.
He was the one shopping this stuff to Hollywood. He had every editor writing movie treatments. He put them to work, and they didn't like it.
I know my business, my foremans, they could. You're cutting things the wrong way, and each pipe costs thousands of dollars or whatever, and you get yelled at, right? And then 20 minutes later, we're having lunch together.
I mean,
that's the way it is.
That's being a man.
Yeah.
But you got these guys in comics, like you said, they've never lived a life. They don't know what. I mean, it's like Larry Hama said to me when I first started working for him. He says, "Don't write about human relationships till you've had one." And I said, "Well, I'm fresh from a divorce," and he goes, "Well, then you're ready."
Right, what I guess drinking coffee in Starbucks is what people know about these days.
I guess I don't know. Don't get me started on whatever the hell their lifestyles are like.
Oh God, I don't know. But thank you for coming. This hour just flew by. Believe me, I could talk for another 10 hours. But
have me back.
Oh, please! That would be the most wonderful thing in the world. Thank you.
No, this was fun. I enjoyed this.
I enjoyed.
I kind of knew you from the emails with the questions. I thought this guy's a cool guy. I like these questions.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I because you said it at the beginning of Chuck Dixon videos. He says the same thing every Wednesday. I'm a working comic book professional. Ask me questions, and I'm like, I'm taking advantage of that. I remember I sent you one question about I thought the Punisher was very selfish, and you spoke for like 40 minutes. I was like, oh my God. I was telling my wife, and my wife's upstairs, like I care about this.
My wife's the same way. She doesn't know anything about
me now. Comics. Stop talking about me.
Yeah, my wife doesn't know anything about comics. Could care less, which is great because I don't want to think about it either when I'm done working. It's like if your wife asked you all about construction when you got home. That's the last thing I want to talk about.
But I would love for you to come back. This was so much fun. Oh man, I'm going to be smiling for a month now. This is the greatest thing. Thank you so much.
No, this was a good time. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Truly was my pleasure. And thank you. And let's see. We got Spin Rack. We got Alpha Core coming out from Eric July.
Yeah.
You got Rambo first kill, right?
Right. That's still up.
That's still up. That's at Splato Comics.
That'll be up through the summer. I mean, it's not like buy it by midnight tonight, but
I'll put that in the description. I get you, try to get you a sale or two from my channel.
All right.
I'm trying to think what else we got. You got every Wednesday. Ask Chuck Dixon. I have to drive and I take an hour train ride every morning. That's what I listen to every Wednesday. Wow. I love it. Yes, you got Impossible Stars 2 coming out with Renzo Rodriguez.
Yeah,
you got a lot.
I wrote that a while back.
You're busy, man. And Renzo is, oh my God, he is
he's good, man.
He's the most likable person on the planet.
He is good, man. He draws all that crazy stuff that Richard and I come up with. So,
yeah.
How beautiful.
Now I'm going to get on another tangent and talk for another hour. But thank you so much. I promised my wife we'd go food shopping.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. I don't even know what else to say. I'm in geek heaven right now. I'm the happiest guy on the planet. Thank you so much, Chuck. This was amazing.
Well, I'll talk to you again soon.
Please do. That was amazing. Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.